Hello, hello. Once again, welcome to another episode of the Grown in Greek podcast. And I'm excited to welcome someone who is doing some phenomenal work, represents Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. But before we get started, I definitely want to encourage everyone to subscribe, comment, like, share the podcast. Find it on all podcast platforms at Grown in Greek Podcast. And if you know someone of the D9 who you think will be a great guest on the podcast, please DM me on IG at Grown in Greek Podcast. And of course, find us on all social media platforms. But let me introduce to you, he is a global leader. He's a pastor of the Northeast Baptist Church in Philly. He's an HBCU alum of Norfolk State University, where he holds an honorary doctorate. He's a media executive and owner of Philly's only Black-owned FM gospel radio station, Philly's Favor 100.7 FM. He's founder of Camp New Joy, that supports education for at-risk youth in Ghana, and so much more. Please welcome to the Grown in Greek podcast, Reverend Jonathan A. Mason Sr. Hello, hello.
How are you, Chocolate? It's a pleasure to meet you. Now, the one thing you did not mention, and I must say because it's something I'm very proud of, I served as the 34th international president of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Not just the 34th, because there's been a whole bunch of presidents. I was the only centennial president that Phi Beta Sigma will ever have. So that's not ego. It's just I thank God. I give him all the glory for even getting an opportunity. I'm a kid that got kicked out of school in 10th grade. I'm sorry, in 9th grade. I had to go to what I like to call a babysitting school where you just did worksheets all day long. And when I got expelled, and I was there with these kids that had actually been to jail, that had actually committed real crime. I was there because I ran my mouth. I was there because I got smart with the teachers. I was there because I got in a couple fights every now and then. But I was with real criminals.
Wow.
Or people who had committed crimes. I'm not going to say they're criminals because I don't want to define people. And I remember going to my father. I said, Dad, we got to get a meeting with the administrators of Abington High School in Pennsylvania, and we've got to ask them, what do I have to do to get back into public school? And after a few months, we did have that meeting. And they told me if I stayed the straight and narrow at adopt a school or daycare school, that I could come back the next year. And not only did I come back the next year in 10th grade, but I ended up becoming a starter on the football team. I ended up becoming a championship wrestler at the school. But most importantly, I got a full scholarship to Norfolk State University that paid for my education. So when I say I give all glory to God, because it could have gone another way.
Mm-hmm.
And because he graced me and showed me favor, I've tried to live a lifetime of giving back to others. So I know that wasn't the way you wanted to start.
No.
But I needed to share with you, that I'm proud of that accomplishment because it shouldn't have been.
Well, see, I was going to surprise people with that part. Okay. I was going to surprise people, but no, let's dive in to that, because I know that is probably a huge catalyst with why you're doing, some of the work that you do. I want to, definitely talk about what you are doing here domestically, but the founding of Camp New Joy and how you are working with at-risk youth in Ghana. Like, I know that probably has had some impact with, some of that work. How does it transcend? Like, how do you see some of the same, issues, and how do you address those? And what inspired you to take it across the water?
So interesting story. My father, Reverend Lee Mason Jr., pastored the church I currently pastor for 41 years. I grew up, I'm in my office right now. Okay. I'm in the office that he sat in right now.
Wow.
I'm sitting in the same space, not the same chair or desk anymore, but the same space he sat in for 41 years. I don't think about that too often, but I just thought about that now. That really just hit me. But anyway, let me move on. But he owned a property in a place called Rustburg, Virginia, which if anyone knows Virginia, Rustburg is about 5 minutes from Lynchburg. Lynchburg is the city that is known for Liberty University. And so my dad owned 2.5 acres of land on top of a mountain in Rustburg, Virginia. He had always tried to get me to go down and see this property with him, and I just, you're always too busy. You make, and it's funny. I was too busy to go down there with him. College, work, whatever. I just whatever, right? And now I always say to my two sons, one day you're going to wish that you took this opportunity to go to dinner with dad or go to the movies with dad or whatever. So anyway, I ended up finally going to see his property in 2013. At that point, dad was stage 4 prostate cancer. And we knew that time was not on our side. And so, I took me and my sons and we went down with him to visit this property in Rustburg. One of the most beautiful settings that I've ever been to, that I've ever experienced. And so one night I'm sitting on the porch, just listening to the wildlife, listening to nature. And I said to myself, and I believe the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, you could bring kids from the hood to this setting and help those young people to recognize that they are not defined by their zip code, but they're defined by their character. And so I'm sitting on the porch and that just came to me. And so I started talking to my dad. I said, well, Dad, there's a lot of land around your place. I said, is any of it for sale? And it just so happened that about 20 acres was available for sale. Wow. And it was available for sale from the very same person that he bought his land from. So I reached out to that guy. And I shared with him, I want to buy all of this land. Didn't have the money readily available. Did not know how I was going to pay for it. But I knew I wanted to buy the land. And Howard Bolden was his name. And he told me the price. The price was ridiculous. Right? It was about almost $10,000 an acre. Okay. And so I told him, I said, don't sell it to anybody else. I'm going to buy this land. And so I went back to New York. I was working at the time at WABC Radio. I was running their sales department and WMBM, which is how I know your producer, Ken Johnson. And I started, and God said, use the skills that you have acquired in your professional life to get this done. And so I immediately started writing a sales presentation where I would sell each of those acres as commemorative acres to corporate sponsors. And for the purposes of that land being used to be a blessing to kids in Philly, DC, wherever, that they could come there and realize that they're defined by their character. I sold my first acre to a gentleman by the name of Don Imus. Don Imus was the morning show host for WABC Radio in New York. I was his director of sales. I sold the Imus in the Morning program along with a bunch of other right-wing products. And I got to tell you, Chocolate, it was interesting when I would go into the office and because I was in charge of hiring for the WABC sales team, I hired Blacks, Hispanics, Jews, Even had a gay guy on the team, right? So you got to imagine how these clients felt when we walked through the door with my menagerie of salespeople to sell this right wing nonsense, right? Anyway, Imus and I have become pretty close. A lot of people thought Imus was a racist. Imus wasn't a racist. Imus was a product of his environment, just like you are, and just like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And Imus had a good heart. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know Imus adopted a young man who happened to be black. So anyway, I told him what I wanted to do. No less than 2 hours later, a courier came to the office with a check for the first acre. About 2 weeks later, he called me up. He said, Rev, he used to call me Rev. He said, Rev, how's the plan going for your camp for at-risk kids? So I'm doing okay. I've sold about 8 acres so far. And he said, well, I tell you what I'm going to do. He says, I'm going to give you my show for a whole day. And at this point, he was on WABC. He was on about 70 stations across the country. And he was on the Fox Business Channel on television. He said, I'm going to give you my show. We're going to do a radiothon. And he said, here's what we're going to do, Rev. He said, we're going to guilt some white people into paying for this camp. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. And so we did the radiothon about a month later. In that one day, we raised almost $500,000.
Oh my God.
And then that spring, he always did a golf tournament for charity. The golf tournament was dedicated to my camp. So that was another almost $200,000 that came in for us to be able to do this work. So we were able to buy all of the land, and then we were able to build a house on a portion of the property, a 5,500 square foot home with 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, beautiful living room, dining room, everything. People said, why did you do that? Why would you build a place like that? I said, because the kids that I'm looking to reach, most of them don't have a bedroom that they sleep in by themselves. Most of them don't sit down at a dining room table and eat dinner. Most of them don't gather together as family in a living room and watch TV or talk about the day's events. And so Camp New Joy, in a long-winded answer, is a demonstration of the fact that if God gives you an assignment, he's not going to let you leave here until you accomplish what he has laid out for you to do. And so it was several years in the making and getting it all done. I'd never built a home before. I'd never cleared land before, knocked down trees, created paths, built a pond, a fishing pond. Never did any of that before. But with the right support that God placed in my pathway, and the financial support that came from many, many sponsors outside of what Imus did for me, we were able to build that camp. And we've been able to take down there a couple hundred young men and young women that have truly been blessed by the experience. So you said, how did it get to Ghana? When I served as international president of Phi Beta Sigma, I inherited a project from my predecessor. He had begun the process of building a technical school in Sahum, Ghana. And unfortunately, he was not able to finish it before his term ended. So I decided that this would be an initiative that I continued on with. And in 2016, we ended up finishing the school, the technical school, and so what we did was we sent a delegation over, I went over with a delegation for the grand opening of the school. I'd never been to Africa. Chaka, have you ever been to Africa? I got to tell you something.
Not yet, not yet, but it's on my list, and I should have gone, a long time ago, but it is on my list soon.
A trip to Africa will change your life. I promise you. That one trip changed my life. So much so that I've been back to Ghana. 2016, my first trip. Since 2016, I've been back 12 times. And in 12 trips, we have adopted, we Camp New Joy, Ghana. I've adopted 3 schools there where we support the young children. And $1 goes a long way in Ghana. But where we support the children with school supplies, renovations to their schools. We built a computer lab over there at one of the schools. We've even adopted a domestic abuse shelter. And so again, my philosophy in life is to always be sure that I'm focused on giving back to somebody else. That doesn't mean that my journey is always easy. I've experienced some ups, some incredible ups, and some incredible downs. But in the midst of it all, no matter what I've experienced, I still got to be helping somebody, or else I don't feel fulfilled.
Well, how maybe this is not the way to ask this, but it's the best way I can ask it. How easy or hard is it to do the work, in Ghana, in places like that? Because, there seems to be an air of opportunity there to go and experience Ghana and the continent of Africa and all. So is it, more so important to do the work there or to go visit there, to live there? What do you think, the mindset should be in terms of, how we should approach it?
Yeah, I believe, 12 trips in, that the first step is to go experience the culture. Ghana is the only country I've been to in Africa. I've had the chance to go to other countries, but I have literally fallen in love with Ghana. Okay? And I will go visit others if the Lord allows it, but this is just where my work's been. So my first advice is to experience the culture. Visit the Cape Coast Castle, which was the last point where our ancestors saw their homeland before they walked through the door of no return. Go inside of the cells where they held our ancestors. This may be a little hard for some of your listeners to hear, but in one cell, there was, you can't see that, but in one cell, there was like a raised portion of the floor that was about a foot higher than the rest of the floor, and it trailed all the way across the wall. And so we said, well, somebody must have done construction in here. What is this? And it was hardened materials, like, rock. Well, Chocolate, the person that was giving us the tour said, that's not rock. That's the fecal matter of your ancestors. And so you're in a cell where they literally that was the only place where they could relieve themselves. To go to the bath, which is about, the geography of it all doesn't really matter in our conversation, but before they would get to the castle and to the ship, they would walk them to this remote facility or remote place where there was a stream. And that was where they would take their last bath before getting on the boat to be able to walk those same footsteps is life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
It's life-changing. But then to be able to tour the villages and to see young men and young women, mothers and fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers, living happily, yet in poverty. I'm not talking about American poverty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about severe poverty, but they're happy. And they love one another. And they show that love to visitors. Once you experience the culture, if you got a heart and a conscience and a love for God, there's no way that you can't think about how you can help the brothers and sisters on that continent. I promise you. It's just it's just natural. So my position is that the visit will move you into mission.
I got to do it. I mean, I don't have an excuse at this point. It's just, a matter of planning. I've lived abroad before. I lived in South Korea and taught English there. So
You look like you're former military, Chocolate. Are
I
you?
do.
Are you
I'm not.
former military?
I'm not, but my dad was. He's
Okay.
my dad's a
Is
vet.
that how you ended up in South Korea?
Well, no, it's not. I have always had a desire to see the world. And I won't say that I'm not attached to the United States, but for whatever reason, in my spirit, it's kind of like, I know that global work or global exposure has always been, a dream and something that has been, just in me since I was young. And so taking the opportunity to, teach English as a second language, as a pathway to, experience the world, to also make money and, having a direct impact on culture, and, expressing what I can, to other cultures was my pathway to doing it. And so I took that and it did change my life.
Yeah.
It absolutely changed my life for the better. It let me see that we as a human race are more alike than we are different.
That's right. That's right.
Here in this country, there's excess beyond imagination that other cultures of people would have no idea about. But that underlying message is what I experienced too, that people are significantly happy with far less than we would know nothing about. And they love transparently, uniquely, sincerely. It is an absolute must to experience something like that outside of this country, because it's mind-boggling, and it makes you want to, well, for me, I can only speak for myself, it makes me want to experience that every day.
So
Absolutely every day.
So another one of the reasons I'm so grateful to Phi Beta Sigma for electing me is I've had a chance to travel to so many foreign countries to visit our troops that are members of the D9. I went to South Korea.
Okay.
I went to Osan.
Yeah.
And I had them make some clothes for me in 2 days. I'm like, how does this happen? You get something made in the United States, it takes 8 weeks, 10 weeks. You got a suit done in a day, 2 days. And then I learned when I went over there, I learned the K-pop. Everybody's all excited about K-pop in the United States now. That's just South Korea. That's how they eat.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you're right. Those experiences just open you up. And it's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to grow.
Oh, absolutely. And South, my experience in Korea, well, first of all, it's one of the smallest countries that you can see like in 4 hours, but it is absolutely beautiful. The mountains, the snow, it is so beautiful. And you places that you only see on postcards, and you never could imagine. But yeah, it was fulfilling, and it's something that I want to experience, like I said, every day. But yeah, Ghana is on my to-do list for sure. Yeah, it's so I'll be hitting you up about that.
Okay.
But in terms of the work and stuff that I've personally seen the members of Phi Beta Sigma do, I can say that your fraternity is relentless with doing service, like service. You are servicemen for sure, and you breathe it. So under your leadership, I've witnessed that. I have many friends that are Sigmas who that's what they do. It's always serving, always volunteering. So kudos to you for your leadership in terms of that. But I kind of want to talk about what that needs to look like, and what kind of advice on a broader perspective with the D9 that we should be targeting for immediate impact, because there are a lot of issues that we can tackle all at one time: the racial injustice, the economic disparities, the healthcare stuff, the voting rights. But what are the immediate issues that you think we should be tackling?
Yeah, so I'm not very kind
Okay.
when it comes to a critique of the D9.
Mm-hmm.
I love the D9. I will always say that navigating through an HBCU and then navigating through a historically black fraternity is what's given me the foundation to do just about everything else in my life. No question. I've always said, and I say this, I'm a visiting professor at Norfolk State, my alma
Mm-hmm.
mater, and I always tell the kids, I say, if you can make it at an HBCU, you can make it anywhere. Because if you can ascend the ladder in an environment that's all us, you know what? Us's ain't easy to deal with, right? And we're tougher on each other than anybody could be outside of us. If you can ascend the ladder of servant leadership in an all black environment, you can lead anywhere. And that's just real talk. That's real talk. So to your question and to your point about the D9, I have established my love for it. But now I've got to establish my disappointment. And when I say disappointment, I'm not renouncing any letters. I ain't going nowhere. I'm a Sigma to the day I die. I'm not that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to look at where we came from. We got to look at why we were founded.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to understand and recognize who the people were that put our organizations together. They weren't quiet. They were not photo op Greeks. They weren't just looking to smile in somebody's camera and be recognized for a title that they held. They were about uplifting the communities. I'm sorry, Ken, I'm knocking, but I get passionate about this. They were about uplifting the communities from which we came from. And I feel like a lot of our organizations now and a lot of the leaders in our organizations now are about social media, not social action. And this is, if there was ever a time for predominantly black organizations to come together and have a voice It's in the midst of this racist mess that's going on in our country right now. And if you ask me, do I hear our voice loudly? I don't. I don't. And I don't understand why. I'm not worried about ceremonial events like walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Been there, done that. It's not about ceremony. It's about active engagement in changing what could be a course that could impact our children, our children's children, and their children if we don't step up. And I see too many of us worried about the likes, and the comments on our freaking social media posts. None of that matters. When I was international president of Phi Beta Sigma, they accused me of being an activist. As a matter of fact, somebody said to me one time, they said, what we try to do, take the role of the NAACP? I'm like, oh, what do you mean by that? You know, because when Michael Brown was killed in St. Louis, we went out to St. Louis. We were in the street. We held a unity rally with the police. We brought hundreds of people to that event. And that was real work. When, and I can't remember all the names now, Garner, when he was killed in Staten Island, we paid for buses of people to go there and to protest. There are so many different events that happened during that 4-year period when I was president, where I made sure that we were there, that we were at the table. When Obama debuted or opened or unveiled his My Brother's Keeper program, we were the only Greek letter organization in the room because we made our presence felt. I'll tell anybody, during my term, we were at the White House 8 times. Prior to my administration, we hadn't been to the White House since Jimmy Carter. You gotta see yourself at the table.
Well, you know what? That it's funny that you say that because I've had conversations with folks, and what disappoints me is that these are the exact words. We need a leader. We need a leader. We're looking for a leader. And I'm like, well, why? Why do you need a person to do work that you can do? I don't comprehend that at all. Why do you think that is? Like, why are people scared to be active? I don't get that. I don't understand it.
I'll sum it up like this. You got to believe in your purpose. You have to have the courage of your convictions. And you have to know that if God set you on a course, he's going to give you all the provisions necessary in order to achieve your goal and achieve what he's established and set forth for you. I'm teaching my Bible study class now. We've been in the book of Acts since last summer. And we're in chapter 23 today. And the last several chapters have focused on Paul. And anybody that knows the Bible knows that Paul was persecuted, prosecuted, threatened with murder, bitten by snakes. But guess what? He still boldly proclaimed Jesus. He boldly proclaimed Jesus because he knew that even though today looked difficult, he knew who held tomorrow. And he knew who had his future in the palm of his hands. And so he stayed steadfast to his commitment. Bottom line is, as these organizations have to stay steadfast to their commitment, their principles, and what we were established for. I talk about Phi Beta Sigma. We are the fraternity of African kings. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana. Phi Beta Sigma, not honorary, pledged Phi Beta Sigma. William Tolbert, Nnamdi Azikiwe, all African presidents, Liberia. Like, These are the people, and then move to the civil rights movement. John Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about, my gosh, the Black Panthers, Huey Newton. These are people that were honorary members. They were made members. This is the stuff from which we come from. So I feel like our organizations are a little bit
Timid.
Yeah. and a little bit focused on, CBC is coming up in September. How many receptions are we going to? You know, who's getting an award? What? Talking about? And so, if you ask, and you say you know a lot of Sigmas, find some Sigmas that were around and active 2013 to 2017. Ask them about me, and they will tell you. They will tell you if they're active. I ain't talking about no unfinancial members that don't even know who the president of the local chat. I'm talking about people who were active. They will tell you that we were an activist organization and that we were involved in the issues that impacted our people. And it's more than giving some money to the March of Dimes. They're multi-million dollar organizations. Well, they don't need our money. We got to be impacting that young brother that's in the hood that doesn't think he can go anywhere else. We've got to be impacting that young sister that may have made a mistake and had a child and thinks that's it.
Yeah.
That's where we got to be. And sometimes we as Black folk become so educated that, and society has heaped upon us laurels and accolades that we've moved on up and forgot that we need to reach and lift up. We didn't get to where we are just to enjoy the accolades. We got there to bring somebody else with us. That's how I live my life. I live in New Jersey. I live 100 miles away from my church.
Wow.
I live 100 miles away from my church. Before my dad passed, I was working in New York City every day. Some of the biggest radio stations in the country. When my dad passed, my home church that at that point had maybe about 15 members said, we want you to come back and be our pastor. It was at that point in 2015, 10 years ago, come this May. I didn't like the folk I was working for at the time anyway. And they offered me an opportunity to do something. And I said, you know what? Tell you what y'all do. I said, I say, first of all, and Ken knows the guy I'm talking about, your producer, but he had made, and I still have this document somewhere today, but he had made some comments that were racist. They were really racist. So context. I had worked for ABC for 8 years, and then it was bought by another company. And so the new guys bring in their new people who are not our people, right? You get the scenario. And so they bring in this one guy to kind of head up sales for the region, old country dude. And we had just started WNBM radio, which was an urban radio station in New York City. Tough signal to sell because, you couldn't hear it everywhere. But I remember sitting in a sales meeting with this guy. It was me, my Jewish local sales manager, and my Black local sales manager. And I don't understand why the numbers aren't the way that they're supposed to be on this thing. I don't care. I don't understand why revenues aren't where they're supposed to be. And that's what the guy said. He says, when I was director of sales at a station in Birmingham, Alabama, we had every buy here, pay here, auto dealership. We had every cash till payday loan company. We had, and this guy is saying this like it was okay to say that. Like it was okay to say, this station is broadcasting to black folk. Go out and get every lowbrow business that doesn't require any credit and get them on this radio station.
Mm.
So I remember when they called me in, they to say, oh, well, we want you to just run WNBM, no longer be W. By the way, I had broken sales records at WABC. I had broken sales records at ABC. And I wasn't their guy.
Mm.
So they wanted to put their guy. I had trained salespeople who are now in leadership positions all over New York City and all over this country in media sales. I trained them, right? So they wanted to move me just to the black station. You're going to take the black station off, right?
Mm.
And I said to him, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, how about this? And I pulled out a stack, a document I prepared with 4 pages long of infractions and violations. And I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to leave today.
Mm.
And you are going to pay me for a year. And if you decide that you're not going to pay me for a year, then I'm going to file a lawsuit against your company tomorrow. I knew it when they told me to come in for a meeting. Anytime somebody tell you, come in for a meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning, I knew it was some stuff getting ready to happen, right? So I had prepared this. I had been keeping all of this information. So I just put it all in one document. And once I showed it to them, they said, we'll pay you for a year. No problem. No problem. I've been on my own since 2015. That was May of 2015. I've not worked for anybody except my clients since May of 2015. That's God's grace, right? That's
Well,
God's favor.
you're doing the work. You're doing the work.
But the point I was making with that, because I'm old, sometimes I veer off. But the point I was making is that I was living up there, and I did not want to disrupt my children.
Yeah.
Their schooling. So I stayed there. So I started making the commute back and forth to Philly every day. And 10 years later, I'm still making that commute. I'm not so now. Once my youngest son, I got 2 boys. Once my youngest son goes to college, I'm up out of there because I'm getting too old for this now, right? but I came back to the hood because my church is in the middle of the hood. Projects across the street, projects down the way, projects. We in the hood. What I'm trying to say is I didn't become so well healed that I forgot about the people.
Amen.
That really need our help. And that's where our Greek letter organizations need to be today. And I feel like we veered off that.
Well, we gotta do a part 2 if you're willing and available to do it, because this is good, and you got me all stirred up. Because no, I mean I mean that sincerely, because you as an undergrad, you don't really understand the gravity of the impact that you can make, as you continue to be a voice and a pillar by representing your organization. And, when you have an opportunity to do that, it changes you. It will, and it should. That's, one of the main reasons why this platform is here, is to amplify that message. And it's my contribution, and I'm trying to do some other things and position myself to do some other things in my local community that will hopefully impact for generations to come. But yeah, we got to change the mindset. I think, and what you're saying has charged me just today. Amen. So yeah, I want to continue this conversation, and I'm not ending now, but I want to, talk some more about some of the other work that you do before we do end. But yeah, if you're open to it, I would love to continue this
I
conversation.
got no problem talking.
Awesome.
As long
Well,
as it's talking about a purpose.
Amen. Well, I know that you have a radio station,
Yeah.
and we're alike in that regard. That's been my career, the good and the bad of it. Radio is like a I don't know what you want to call it, but it helps. And so you have a radio station that is Black owned, it's gospel, and it's a media outlet that I know shares a powerful message. And what is that message? How can we, take what you're doing with your radio station and amplify that message to the broader community?
So we are Philly's last surviving. And
Mm,
Philadelphia's a gospel town. We
mm.
are Philly. Where are you located, by the way? I'm sorry.
Alabama.
Yeah, we are Philadelphia's last surviving Black-owned gospel radio station.
Mm.
Okay. At one point, I had 8 radio stations.
Did you?
Yeah, but the pandemic fixed that for me. As I told you, I've had some incredible highs and some incredible lows. And so, unfortunately, those stations were in tourist destinations. And
Mm.
so 3 years with no tourism in what I would call C to B level markets, it hurt. It hurt. But again, this is God orchestrating your steps, right? So 2 years into ownership of those stations, I had the opportunity came to me to start a station here in Philadelphia from scratch. I mean, from zero, from nothing. And I don't know why I did this. Chocolate, no, here's my point. I could have just started this station and put it under the existing umbrella of stations I already had. But something at that point, now I know it wasn't nothing but the Holy Spirit said, separate this and put it under a different company. And so when those stations went down, I still had a Philadelphia radio station, right? And so, our focus has shifted since late 2023 to building this brand,
Mm.
to generating the types of revenues we need in order to, take care of a very small team. We got a small team. We got about maybe 15 people that work with the station.
Okay.
But we have the potential to go higher, and we will go higher. We will go higher as time moves forward, and we're going to get additional signals. We've got opportunities to pick up more signals in Jersey and in Philadelphia. So one decision I made is that as future ownership goes, I want stations that I'm close to. I don't want anything that's 300-400 miles away from me, because you got to be able to trust the people that are operating your product. So yeah, favor is a passion. But when you talk about work, like I said, I'm pastoring this church, also serving as a professor at Norfolk State. One thing I tell your listeners is always have multiple revenue streams.
Mm.
Always have
That's going to part two. Part two, we'll cover that part two.
Always, it's critical,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if all I had were those stations and they went away, I'd be suffering, right? But God has been good, and so I can't ever question God, because He's always taken care of me. My child is my son is in college. He's good. My other boy's in private school. He's good. There's no substitute for good children. And when you have them, it's your responsibility to make sure that you do everything to make sure they're good children. So God has allowed me to do that. So I'm thankful.
Well, I am honored. I, like I said, I'm full from this conversation, and what you've shared, for me has inspired a different way of thinking about what's ahead. And not to be, not to doubt the opportunity that's been presented.
Sure.
Not to doubt it and doubt myself that the mantle has been given.
Amen.
So I am so honored to talk to you, to have been introduced to you, and I cannot wait for part 2. And just kudos to what you're doing, because I know you setting Philly on fire up there.
Yeah. Well, we do the best we can. And it has been a pleasure speaking to you. And like I said, as long as life lasts and the creek don't rise, I'll be happy to do a part 2. And you make sure you get on your bucket list to get out of here and go see your brothers and sisters in Africa.
Oh, no doubt. Let me tell you something else that's on my bucket list, and it happens to be in Philly.
Okay.
To see the mural of Dawn Staley.
Okay.
Because she's one of my favorite basketball players of all time. Well, she is my favorite basketball player of all time.
Okay.
So I got to get to Philly, and I got to get to Ghana for sure.
Philadelphia born and bred, Dawn Staley.
So
God bless her.
Oh,
God
yeah.
bless her.
And changing things.
Oh, yeah.
Changing things.
Oh, yeah. Making the enemy mad.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. She knows her foundation, too.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I thank you for the invitation.
It's my honor, and I cannot wait for part 2. So everyone, please. How can people look you up? How can people connect?
So I'm real easy. I'm on Facebook at Jonathan Mason. Just find me there. I'm on Instagram at Jonathan A. Mason. That's Jonathan, JONATHANAMASON. So you hit me up, I hit you back.
What's in a name? What's in a name?
That's it.
You got that name.
Praise the Lord.
You got that name. Well, thank you so much again for joining me on the Grown and Greek podcast. And everyone, please follow, like, share this episode, because it will inspire others. Subscribe, and definitely follow us on social media at Grown and Greek Podcast. And if you know any other impactful, inspiring, powerful voices like the good Reverend, please DM me on IG at Grown and Greek Podcast. Thank you so much again. It's been an honor.
Outstanding. Thank you. Good night, everybody. All right.
You can support Grown and Greek by subscribing to the podcast, shopping our exclusive luxury accessory line, or purchasing books from the D9 Book Club by visiting our website at grownandgreekpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, comment, and share on social media at Grown and Greek Podcast. Thanks for watching.